I love your intro, though, turning around with the computer.
I know, right? Hello.
Well, hello there. So welcome, everyone. My name is Terrell Gibson, and I'm here to welcome my friend, my colleague, and now my peer in the Academy, Shannon Baker Davis.
Hello. I am Shannon Baker Davis. I'm a picture editor. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
I mean, I know you've come up in a similar way that I came up, which is like old school. You know, there were no shortcuts whatsoever. You know, we started from the very beginning and built a body of work and got to a certain position and then had to kind of reboot and start over and work on, smaller projects again, cut your rate in half, try to build it up. And you're constantly in that reset. And then you get to a moment like this, right? Where you realize, decades later that all of that has kind of like come to fruition and really paid off. So it's really good to kind of like step back and outside of yourself every now and then and just realize, wow, this is an incredible journey. This is an incredible journey. I certainly, as a kid from, New Jersey with no connections to the film business whatsoever, didn't have that sort of, I guess you would say just that, they say, you have to see it to be it. I never saw it, you know what I mean? Started working in New York, never ran into another person that looked like me, in that period of time. But slowly but surely, you realize we all are out there,
Yeah, I'm the same way. I grew up in Augusta, Georgia. My mom is a nuclear chemist and my dad is an electrical engineer. And I was like, I want to do movies. And they're like, well, how are you going to do that? Like, we don't know anything about that. You can't do that. So you have to have an extra bit of drive when you don't have anybody in your world that has experienced, working up the ranks or been handed a job or, has a relative, a parent that already works in the industry. And I'm still amazed that I get to do this for a career and I get to do this to make money. And, no matter when I am up till 2 a.m. or I've gotten another round of notes and I'm complaining, the moment that someone says, well, what do you do? And you tell them, and then they're like, oh my God, that's so amazing. And you're like, I guess it is kind of amazing, and it just makes you remember that you were that person that just glamorized this whole business. And no matter how it may trouble you at times, I'm so proud to be an editor and proud to work on feature films and work with some of the people that I've worked with over the years. It's still amazing to me.
So I kept running back in my mind how you might respond to me asking you for a drink after.
So that was you asking me? That was elaborate.
In my mind, it wasn't that forward. You know what I mean? It was more smoother than that.
I was supposed to call you, I thought.
Yeah, you were supposed to, but you didn't.
So yeah, talk to us a little bit more about that in terms of your arc in terms of starting reality and then getting into scripted and then feature.
Yeah. So, I graduated from AFI in 2003 and there were not a lot of jobs in scripted when I came out. There was no Netflix, there were no streaming platforms. It was like you worked on Law and Order or you worked on some sitcom. And so I moved back to the East Coast and got a job on a HGTV show. And I was happy to assist, but I always knew I wanted to cut. And so I kept with that because I had narrative education. I had a narrative filmmaking education, and that helped me a lot in reality TV because we were constructing the story. We were taking footage that was, and it was similar to documentary filmmaking where they shot over a long period of time and the editors had to figure out what the story was. Did that for 10 years and worked on shows that won Emmys, but I decided I really wanted to do narrative. And so I moved back to LA. Two friends were directing an independent feature and we had been talking about me editing it for years, and they finally got the money together and they were like, we understand if you don't feel ready. But I was like, this is now or never. So I cut that independent feature and loved it so much. And I was like, this is it. This is what I have to do. Networking and trying to, and sending out cold emails and doing a lot, meeting with people. And Katie Skirping, who was on The Good Wife, and she had been the assistant on The Good Wife for 6 seasons, and she was being bumped up for the 7th season, the last season. And she was like, I feel like she's like, I can't hire you now. They won't let me hire someone so green because I am a new editor. She's like, but let's stay in touch. And we stayed in touch. And then at one point during the season, the assistant editor that she had hired had to leave. And she called me on like a Friday and she was like, can you come on Monday? And I said, I'm there. And it worked out. Like, I assisted that show, and then I assisted Jamie Nelson on the first season of Insecure. Then I assisted Farrell Levy, who was my professor at AFI. And then I talked my way into an editing job on a new series for BET. And all the while I was cutting independent features, cutting shorts, just cutting anything I could that was narrative. That's the way I got to cut The Weekend with Stella. And that just like catapulted my career because we got into Toronto and it was in the theater. And, then we did The Photograph together. Mm-hmm. And once you do a film that either does really well at the festivals or gets picked up by a studio, gets picked up by a streamer, it's like, then your name is on lists and it just becomes a little bit easier.
Oh yeah? Spin Doctors. Classic. Tim, I want to chop it up more, but I got to get to my squash game. Was that Visa or MasterCard?
Oh, this boy shit is crazy.
There's an element of persistence when you're an editor. I would say that about being an editor. You can't be a quitter. Like, you have to be the one person that's like, everybody quit around me, but I'm going to go sit in my Avid and I'm going to get this thing done. Like, I'm going to be that person. And I would just encourage, like, if that's not how you feel about something, then probably there's something else for you. There's something else. There's something for everyone, but there are certain aspects of a personality that an editor just has to have and feel and want to have in themselves. So that's why I say persistent.
Every day you get in, ask yourself the question when you leave, did I make it better today? And then the accumulation, hopefully, of, months and months of really putting the screws to it. Hopefully you end up on the other side with something that everybody's proud of, So I'd say that, and particularly African-American young aspiring editors, because when I came up, I knew of, literally 2, maybe, and I might be patting that by 1. But just, if you see the 2 of us and you're watching this right now, understand, that if we've made it this far, certainly you can too. So, keep working. Keep working.
Of course.
Yeah.
And I always hope that, like, we both talked about how long it took to get to where we are. And I always hope that it'll be easier for the next person. I always hope that whatever I do, that I impressed enough people that they'll be like, oh, we gave this young Black woman a shot. I'm not going to be so afraid to do it again. Really be able to feel free to have an opinion about things and walk into the room and know that you know what you're doing. And I always hope that it'll be a little bit easier, and there'll be 3 or 4 people next year or in a couple of years that are being invited into the academy that are people of color or women of color.